Okay, David here, David Hart, G4 Guitar. What I'm going to do in this session is actually talk to Alex about music career goals. And I know that a lot of people out there want to not just learn to play guitar, but they want to have a career as a guitarist or as a musician or a performer. So we're going to talk about achieving musical goals. I'll just give you a quick 2-minute summary on what I achieved in sort of my earlier years. In my teens and 20s, I was pretty well working live, playing in various bands full-time, and we were doing gigs. At that time, the pub scene was very big, pub and clubs, so we had a covers band that we were able to take on the road, and I actually played up on the Gold Coast for a while, did sort of all the New South Wales coast, Sydney, all those sort of areas, and things were great. If you had a good band and you were reliable, which was really the big thing, and it's still the big thing today, is being reliable, you got work. Now, I hear from a lot of guys today that they have trouble getting work and so forth, and a few years back now, it's actually been about 10 years since I've really done any professional work because I do this these days. But when I was, the last time, there was a guy who was a student who said, look, he wanted to get some work. He's a singer and guitarist, how to go about it. And what I did is I took him out to we just started walking the streets of Sydney and going into restaurants and asking them, and I think we only went into 2 restaurants and we got a gig straight away. And so these are the kind of things I'm going to talk about, is how to get gigs. He ended up having a residency there for a while, and there are plenty of gigs out there. There's always opportunities out there. You just got to know where to look and be prepared to do the work and be reliable. So, Alex, I'll start with you. So, can you give me an idea, your background? Have you done some live work? Have you been playing around? What's been happening?
Yeah, well, look, basically, I've been playing in bands and things since about maybe year 10 or year 9. I think my first band started, just out of high school, and I'm still playing with 2 of the guys from that, actually. So, yeah, and basically, I've been in one other serious band, one sort of, what I'd call serious. We, had a manager and we were touring around and stuff, started playing shows in Sydney, and that sort of disintegrated just because of mutual disinterest. We decided maybe it was just best to sort of go our separate ways. But yeah, I've been playing gigs, doing bass or electric guitar for pretty much would be going on since maybe since 2007. So yeah, a good what's that? 7 years.
Okay.
Okay, but cool. Nothing huge.
All right, and what's your goal? Is there a kind of a big goal at the end of all this? Be a rock star?
Well, I mean, it's kind of funny. My ultimate huge goal would actually really to be, this is really long term, but would be to have a band that I'm able to take out on the road and know will consistently have a fan base that will come to see the shows, and I mean, eventually maybe even have a roster of other bands that I have on, a record label or something. So maybe that sort of managing thing too, but the ability to delegate that and, go out on the road as well. Obviously getting a steady income from that is good too, but it's less of a priority because I sort of have a business which is fairly self-sustaining at the moment. Yeah, and I imagine that will grow as well anyway. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. Just the ability to go to anywhere in the world and have fans come see it, really.
Okay, great. So one of the things, I mean, looking at your band, I would just sort of go to the thing of that you do want it to be profitable. If it's going to be a business, yeah, we want it because that's really a sign of part of the success. If you're not making any money out of it, and it's great to do charity work, and it's great to get out there and play and perform is brilliant. I mean, these days when I play, I don't get paid. I just jump up on stage and play with whoever, and I do it for the fun of it, not for the money. But if you're going to have a band as a business, an ongoing business, the reason you need money coming in, it needs to be profitable, is because in order to keep your band members doing it full time, in other words, to commit to it, it's a bit like professional sports. You can't be a professional sports player if you're not getting paid, or well, hang on, I'll reword that because that's the definition of professional, but you can't play the sport full time if you don't have some kind of money coming in, and that's what often used to happen is today we see with a lot of the professional football players, they used to have full-time jobs, and then they would just train a couple of nights a week and then play on the weekends. That was how those sports were. But these days they're professional. They don't do anything else, obviously, because they have $1 million contracts for them, and so it's all about being a full-time professional player. And for your band, it's the same. You want to be able to look after the guys who are in your band, pay them professionally, because some of them will stick with you, some may or may not. But then obviously there's the rest of it as well, as the road crew, the management, everybody else that comes along with it. So that's why you need to get business. So if you take that approach, again, the passion needs to be there, and I really make this point. You have to be passionate about your music. So let's not take that away. But you also have to be professional and see it just in the same way that you see any business. If you open a shop, if you sell stuff online, whatever you do as a business, the band needs to be seen as the same thing. So really we just need to break it down into what it's going to be. What is the product? What is the market? Who are you targeting? And how are you going to build your audience? And I have a very clear, I wish I knew this stuff when I was 21, when I wanted to be a rock star. Unfortunately, I didn't. I just did what everybody else does at that age and made all the kind of typical mistakes and got disillusioned and all the rest of it. So hopefully I can sort of share through my business history some of the lessons that I've learned over the years that will help you to be able to build that career. Now, so let's go to the big dream. Let's just imagine you want to be playing in a stadium with 100,000 people. Does that sound cool?
Sure. Yes, that would be great.
Okay. So let's look at an example to work out and then reverse engineer. And this is the way that you build most things, is you start with the end product, the end result, and then you reverse engineer. So let's look at a big name band. We can look at the Rolling Stones. We can look at AC/DC, Guns N' Roses, Metallica, any of these bands. But when we look at the band and they turn up and they do a gig, and there's let me throw some questions to you. Let's look at Metallica, for instance. How many people do you think would turn up to a Metallica gig?
In Sydney, say?
Yeah, just like an average gig anywhere in the world.
Okay, well, it would be a stadium, so I imagine it would be at least 10,000. Yep. That's what I would imagine, yeah.
Okay, cool. So there'd be anywhere between 10,000 and maybe 100,000 people, depending on the size of the stadium. All right. So where do those people come from? How do those people find? Because in a lot of cases they're paying $50, $100, even $1,000 a ticket. Why are they paying such enormous money?
Well, for a start, they would have been fans from the beginning, so they can now, because it's a good 30 years on, they can probably now afford to pay those sort of exorbitant prices because they've been with the band from the beginning, so they've built up. They have fiscally sort of increased their availability as the band have grown as well. So that's one reason why they might be able to,
And so where do these people come from? How do they know about Metallica?
Well, they hear look, I'm a Metallica fan, and I heard about Metallica from my friend in school. He sort of gave me a CD and said, listen to these guys, they're really good, and I did, and now I'm a Metallica fan. So just word of mouth, I guess, is the main thing.
Excellent. So
advertising.
Yep. Sorry.
Yeah, like advertising, marketing is also important, I suppose. Specifically, maybe not TV ads so much, but internet sort of marketing, websites, I guess Facebook, that sort of thing.
Okay, great. So Metallica, obviously referrals come into it, which is, and we can look at branding of their product. They also have, and I look at bands like, say, Rolling Stones, AC/DC, Metallica, these are kind of ones I put into this category. They've kind of stuck to their core thing. They're not off trying to do different styles of music or be everything to everybody. Would you agree?
Yeah, definitely. They're doing what they've done from the beginning. Although they have evolved. I mean, there's that has to.
Yeah.
Although recent years they might have backtracked a little bit, arguably. Yeah, but there's definitely a line running through it that you can trace from the beginning to where they are now.
Yeah. And look, let's be honest, with most of these bands, when they turn up to a gig, they turn up for the classic songs. They want to hear the classic songs. If I think, for Metallica, they would probably play Nothing Else Matters at every gig that they do. Maybe not. Maybe they're sick of it. But same with AC/DC. There's a few songs, Shook Me All Night Long or Back in Black or something like that, where it's a classic song, so they'll play it at just about every gig. So you have these kind of, and these are really their core products. And if you compare that to, say, McDonald's, it's like their Big Mac. It's the product that people know them for. And not everyone goes to McDonald's and buys a Big Mac, but a lot of people do. It's the draw card for a lot of people to go to McDonald's is to buy the Big Mac. So it's the same. People go to an AC/DC concert or a Metallica concert, and they go for the big one. So what this tells us is that yes, these bands evolve, and yes, they grow, but at some point they come up with something that really captures the attention of their audience. And in most cases with a band, it's a song, but it's not always necessarily a song. It can be an image as well. But there's nearly always a song. And if I go back to my sort of and this is let me just kind of give this. This is called I forgot the term, but it's basically a bit like the 80-20 principle. But there's actually a law around it, and that. But basically, what it says is that the top song will actually outstrip just about every other song, even collectively within a band's fame and fortune. And I look at, say, Led Zeppelin, and Stairway to Heaven is that song. Right?
Sure.
That was the song that really took Stairway to Heaven from being Led Zeppelin from being just a good band to being absolute legends. That one song did it. If I look at, say, Eagles, it was Hotel California. That one song. If we look at Metallica, perhaps there's a couple of songs that sort of rank really well, but I guess Nothing Else Matters is a big one. Would there be any others that you'd add to that?
I'd say The Sandman as well is pretty.
Yeah.
But what else? I'd say those two pretty much carry it for the most part.
And I would say Enter Sandman, that riff. When anyone thinks of Metallica, that riff instantly comes into their head, right?
That was like the first song I heard. So it's like that riff almost. It's like Smoke on the Water. It's just totally iconic.
Exactly. And so Smoke on the Water. Half the people, or probably 80% of people who know Smoke on the Water, don't even know who wrote the song. They don't realise it's a Deep Purple song. So this is what happens: is you get this, and this can often launch them, but sometimes it's not the song that sticks; it's the image, it's the character. When people think of the Beatles, it was songs that launched them early. Some of their, the first big song I think was "Love Me Do," but a couple of their songs really stuck. But in the end, it was the personalities of the Beatles that stuck, that people remember. And another example is Kiss. Kiss had the song "I Was Made for Loving You," which was their big hit. It was their Stairway to Heaven, if you like, and it was a huge song when I was very young. But then it became their image, their makeup and the whole thing, which sort of carried them. So there's a kind of a lesson in this as far as building your career. You need to have something that people can hang on to. There needs to be either a song or an image, or just something that they can grab that keeps them coming back to you. And when people go to Metallica concerts, I can guarantee you a lot of those people who turn up to the Metallica concert are just coming to listen to the classic songs that they recorded 20 years ago.
Sure.
You know, that it's same with the Rolling Stones. There aren't many people who turn up to a Rolling Stones concert, you know, knowing their latest songs. I certainly don't, and probably most of the crowd don't even know their latest songs. So, you know, I think Paul McCartney recently released an album as well, and I doubt many Beatles fans know any of those songs and have even listened to them. So this is what you're trying to do, is that if you want that big audience, that big stadium audience, if that's the kind of long-term career that you're aiming for, you need to look at writing lots of songs, and you need to be working towards coming up with that song that's going to be the killer song.
Sure.
It's going to be your Stairway to Heaven. Now, let's keep in mind here that songs like Stairway to Heaven, Eagles, Hotel California, you know, these kind of classic songs, in some cases they get lucky. Sometimes a band comes up, you know, a one-hit wonder band, or their first song is just happens to be an amazing song for whatever reason, or it clicks. But in most cases, that's not how it happens. In nearly every case, it evolves. If I use the example of Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon. For a lot of people, that was the first album of Pink Floyd that they got them onto Pink Floyd. And probably 90% of Pink Floyd fans, David Gilmour fans, Dark Side of the Moon was the album. But they'd actually done, I don't know exactly how many, maybe 7 or 8 albums before that.
Yeah, I got a couple of them. Yeah, but yeah, there's a few before that initial one. But I mean, Dark Side of the Moon was certainly the first one I ever heard. Like, that got me on listening to Pink Floyd.
Yeah. I'd actually heard some of their stuff before that because my dad played it, but it didn't interest me. I just thought it was weird. You know, I was a 6-7-year-old kid, and to me, I had no interest in it at all. But it was once I heard Dark Side of the Moon, which was actually, I think I was about 13, 14 by the time I heard that. That's when I thought, wow, these guys are great, and that's what got me into Gilmour from that point on. Now, let's just wind it back a little bit so that we can come back to basics. So, you know, not getting ahead of yourself here. But we can look at another example like the Rolling Stones, who actually became popular before they even wrote songs. And they actually, I think they sat down and wrote like 100 or 200 songs and to come up with a few songs. And eventually they came up a couple of those very early songs that they had, like Under My Thumb, and I think maybe Jumping Jack Flash, and those kind of songs early on. But they didn't do that straight away. They actually were already getting an audience, and even someone like Hendrix was already, you know, I think he'd written stuff, but it wasn't his songs. It was people were talking about. It was his image and his guitar playing and his, you know, stage antics. So it's not just about your music, like I said. It doesn't have to be just a song. It can be the image that you portray as well. Now, if you kind of want to build the career, so there's two kind of music careers that you can build, in my opinion, just as general careers. One is a playing career where you get paid to play, and there are guys around, you know, we think of them as session players where they get paid $100, $200, $500, $1,000 a night, whatever, and they can even be, one day they can be touring with, you know, someone like Taylor Swift or whoever, and the next they're playing a local jazz gig in you know, downtown New York. So these guys are just in it to play. That's what they do. They don't have any kind of ambition to be big. So someone like Steve Morse might be a good example, where he plays for Deep Purple now. He does that, but he also does a lot of his own stuff. He's not signed up to Deep Purple because it's going to make him a rock star. He gets to enjoy a bit of a rock star life, but he's just, to him, it's the best paying gig around. It pays a lot more than his gigs that he does at a local, you know, venue with 50 or 100 people turn up. He can actually play there in front of stadiums and get paid probably 10 grand a night for his trouble. Now, if we're talking about going the direction here of the product of the band as being a success story, is that right? It's like your band is going to be a product? Yeah. Okay. So Yeah, so number one is writing lots of songs. Make sure that you're just pumping out the material and trying to evolve your music. But here's the key, is delivery. And this is what a lot of bands and a lot of guys do not do. And someone who's good to read on this topic and really sort of help you in this area is Seth Godin. I don't know if you've heard of Seth Godin, but
yeah, I've read The Dip, and I did that lecture series as well that he did, the entrepreneurial school. So yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah, that's right. You did. I saw that. So Seth Godin is great with this topic. He views himself as an artist like anybody else. He's a journalist, but he's an artist. He creates. You know, an artist doesn't have to be someone necessarily draws pictures or writes music. They can be someone who actually is a serious journalist, writes books, as he does. Now, he's written plenty of books. He's had plenty of flops, and he's had plenty of ups and downs in his career. But what he always talks about is delivering. And that's where most people fall short. So when you write something and you create some music, the idea is yes, do the best you can, but set yourself delivery dates. In other words, I've written this song, I've recorded this song, I've put it together. I'm going to get it out there. I know it's not perfect, but I'm going to get it out there anyway. And then deliver it. And then move on and do your next product and deliver it. And next one and deliver it. And if you look, as we went back, you know, even Pink Floyd, they spend a lot of time on each album. Each album, they sort of, you know, would spend almost a whole year writing their album. So they went to a lot of work and did it really well, which I sort of, you know, fully endorse as well. But they also delivered. They made sure that they got stuff out there. You know, in their early albums, you know, some people like them, but for me, they were pretty ordinary, especially compared to what they did later in the career. So that's the idea. And so question, how much music have you actually delivered? How much music is out there and available, say on iTunes or on YouTube for people to not necessarily even buy, but just to listen to?
A bit, not a lot, but a bit.
Okay, so you've delivered a little bit, and out of that, are you doing it on a regular, consistent basis? Do you have a schedule?
I don't have a schedule, no.
Okay, so that's where you need to go. Is you need to, the first step for you, and I write this down. Step one is to create a schedule. Okay, you're going to deliver a song, and I remember you writing something about this, about writing out a song every week or something like that.
Yeah, which I actually did for about 30 days. I mean, maybe it was a little ambitious. I was saying writing a song every day, or at least a fragment of a song, and I did keep that up for 30 days. But it was quite challenging.
Yep, that's good. And you can do those things for a short term, like say, you know, like you said, 30 days, write a new song idea every day, and then pick the best, and then work on it for the next month, sort of thing. You know, that's the kind of my philosophy is. And I've got lots of little good ideas and snippets, but you know, even though I'm preaching this stuff, I don't do it because it's something that I haven't done as a career, and I'll be quite clear about that. Writing music, you know, it's not something that I really wanted to do as a career. I did early on, but in these days, because of family and all the rest of it, I don't want to be going off and touring and doing all that sort of stuff. So for me now, it's just a hobby. It's just fun. I enjoy doing it. But if you want to do it as a career, then what you need to be doing is writing those ideas, keeping notes. Think of it like an author writing a book. You need to put together the ideas. You then pick the best ideas. You work on them. You flesh them out. You do whatever you need to do. Then once you've got all the ideas down for the album, you've sketched the album out, if you like. Then what you want to do is perhaps gather the other musicians who are going to be working on it with you. Depends on the way that you want to do it. If you're working as a band, then you guys are all working on your own parts at the same time anyway. If you're doing it as a kind of a solo album, then you bring in other artists who can, or other musicians who can record the parts. You know, I want a bass player, I need a drummer, I need this and that. And so you do those parts. Or as a lot of guys do now, they just do it all themselves. Which is possible as well, depending on what your music is. So you setting a schedule for delivering your music, because this comes back to the thing that I talk about within the guitar teaching and so forth. and that is that it's about effort. It's not about the result. So, in other words, when you schedule and you commit yourself to doing regular writing, so regular writing, recording, and delivering, so putting it out there, then that becomes just a schedule for you. Some of the things will work, some of them won't work, some of the songs will be good, some of them won't. In fact, 90% of them will go in the trash, and the other 10% you'll stick to. You'll come up with something. And so by doing that, constantly having delivery dates to say every month I'm going to deliver a new song. I'm going to put something together. I've got a month to do it. At the end of the month, it goes out there. And then what you do is you start building a fan base around that music. So if I know, for instance, that let's say I'm on your list and every month you're recording and putting a new song together and you're putting it up, and then you message me, you tag me in Facebook, hey, I got a new song up, my monthly song is up, then I'll check it out. Now, if I don't like it, if it's not for me, maybe I won't check any more songs, perhaps. And that's no problem, because you only want people who kind of get you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. All right. So you don't want to be listening to people who are just criticizing you. And this is the thing with art. You should know whether or not your music is up to the standard that you are comfortable with. And then if you and it doesn't have to be perfect, by the way, this is another thing to keep in consideration, because you'll start to attract people to you who will listen to your music and go, well, it's not perfect, but I'm a producer or I'm a record company or whatever, but I can see it's got potential. And then they can sort of come in and help you. So when you're doing your songs, when you're sort of following your schedule and then you're building up your audience, there will be some people who will like your music. And I went through this for a period where I produced a couple of CDs, which I wasn't happy with, by the way. I thought that they were under par just because I didn't really have the time to focus on the writing and get it all right. But what was funny, as soon as I started playing it, I was playing live, and I was also had the recordings, which I started building an audience. I started building a following because there were people who liked it. For some strange reason, there were some people who actually liked what I was doing, and so they started following it, and they started telling other people. And so even though I can't say I built a big audience, there were about 100 people who were anticipating and looking forward to whatever I was doing next, and that was for a short period for a couple of years. So once your music starts going out there and people start hearing it and they like it, then they have this natural tendency to want to share it with someone else, and that's where you start to build your audience. And then what you want to do is those people who like your music, you want to start getting feedback from those people who like the music to say, well, what is it you like about this song? And they might say, I really like the guitar work, or I like your voice, or I like the way the songs or the stories that you tell. So you're getting a bit of a picture of what they like about you, and that becomes kind of the area that you focus on.
Okay. Can I backtrack a little bit just to the scheduling element?
Yeah.
How would you sort of go about putting that schedule to like in a real life example? Like, what would you sort of suggest in terms of? I mean, let's go with my sort of situation here. I've got a shop front where I'm able to basically very soon I'll be able to record because I've got basic mics and things. I've got a place to rehearse. Maybe 3 days a week. That's some commitment I can get from my bandmates right now. And I've got pretty much most mornings free just to do things. I mean, based on that sort of time schedule and that availability, what would you sort of recommend if I really want to start taking it seriously?
The thing with anything is to start small.
Yep.
So the mistake that a lot of people make is that they try and jump in and do, and it does work sometimes, but they try and say, okay, I've got 4 hours a day. It's like guitar students, they say, okay, I'm going to practice 4 hours a day, and they jump in and go hard for the first week or two, but then they burn out, don't have the momentum, or other things creep up. They forget that when they schedule 4 hours a day into their schedule, other things are going to now be pushed out the back. You know, other important things that they can't just quit. So the best thing for you to do is just to schedule, you know, an hour a day to work on this project. And
Yep.
if you can consistently do that for the first month and come up with something at the end of the month you can deliver, then the next month, if you want to increase that to 90 minutes, then go for it. And then the month after that, if you want to increase it to 2 hours, go for it. So consistency. Okay. You are your habits. At the end of the day, if you're not doing it on a daily basis as a habitual kind of, you know, as a habit, you're not going to get very good at it. That's the bottom line.
Mm.
Yeah. So start small, even half an hour a day. Just say, okay, if you can do it for a month, let's just see if you can do it for a month. If you can sit down at you know, at 9 o'clock at night, say, or 9 o'clock in the morning, whenever you feel is the time, you can sit down and do it for half an hour every day for a week even. Then the next week maybe up to 45 minutes, and then the week after that up to an hour. But get into that habit. That's the first thing.
Yeah. Specific time to do it?
Yeah, same time every day.
Okay, cool. I mean, yeah, that makes sense because it's the same as guitar practice. You know, just pick a time, do it.
It's a habit. If you're not developing the habit, then you're not really. You're probably never going to be very good at it. And that's really one of the reasons I don't do it, is because I already have my schedule full enough. I don't need to add more to my schedule. I like doing it, and I do it sometimes, but I know for me to do it seriously as a career, I would have to be doing it every day.
Yeah.
So it's a daily thing. So far, if we just sort of recap here, just so we don't lose track of where we're going, so far we're talking about, you know, what I call modeling, and even though I didn't use that term before, modeling is looking at a band that's already been successful, like AC/DC, Metallica, etc., and go, okay, we want to be like them. So that's your model. I would go and study those guys. Go and study, you know, where they come from, how they began, what they did. And when I look at, you know, if I look at someone like John Petrucci or, you know, Steve Vai or Satriani or any of these guys, and I look back on what they were like when they were young, they practiced every day. You know, there was no stops and starts. It was really, they were just at it every day, you know, all day. So we were watching, you know, my wife and I were watching The Voice the other night, and this Korean girl came out, and she said she lives in the northern suburbs of Sydney, and she said straight from the beginning, I practice all day, every day. She said from 9 o'clock in the morning through till 9 o'clock at night I practice singing, and I just straight away said, you know, this girl's going to be phenomenal. You know, she's been doing this for 9 years. Started when she was 20. For 9 years, she's been practicing all day. You know, full days, very dedicated. So she's got to be good. She came out and she just blew them away. The 4 judges were literally on their knees begging her to be on their team. You know, and that's just what it takes. That's, you know, if you want to be the best at something, then you've got to be just going harder than anybody else.
Yeah.
So, but that's when we look at modelling. If you look at, you know, I know a little bit about AC/DC, but if you go back to early AC/DC, you know, their older brothers, or, you know, the older brother George Young was in the Easy Beats, so they were very kind of influenced by him, and you know, Angus, were, you know, picking it up every day. Another example was Van Halen Brothers. The good story behind them is that they were immigrants into America. They couldn't speak English when they first came to the US, and so they were kind of spent a lot of time together as brothers, hanging out, because they couldn't speak a lot of English, and so they used to just practice all the time their instruments, and like hours and hours every day they were just practicing after school. Just practice. They didn't go off and do what other teenagers were doing at that time. They were actually practicing. So that's why they got really good. And so it's the ongoing story. If you want to be a great songwriter with a great band, you've got to dedicate. You've got to do it every day, and start small and then build from there. And that's the model. It works. That's the model I've said time and time again.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. I guess the only pitfall I can think of in terms of this would be prioritizing specifically what to do. Because I mean, you could. I guess I could literally just sit down and write songs every day. But I'm thinking in terms of like studying production of it as well. So,
Well, so you're cutting out a bit there. Looks like you've even dropped out. But hopefully you'll pop back in a minute. So I'll just answer that question. We'll talk about what you're talking about there, and that is that when you're writing, what you're trying to do is listen to music. Listen to as much music as you can along the styles that you're listening to, and really pull it apart and dissect it. Because as you listen to music and you pull it apart and you get familiar with the music that you're trying to write, then that will come out in your writing, and it will always come out in your own way and its own flavour. But by actually sort of looking at songs and going, okay, what is this song? Why do I like this song? Why did this song work for me? What is it about this song? And you may never even be able to answer that question. But by pulling that song apart and looking at it, okay, I like the way the drums are layered there. I like the way that the harmony vocals are sitting. I like this. I like that. Then as you start to do that, then that comes it's incorporated into your own music, and it starts to come through. I know that it depends on your age and what you listen to, but I know that I can listen to bands today, and a lot of what I listen to, especially if it's still in kind of the flavour of rock and whatever, then I can hear where their influences have come from. I can hear, that's a Led Zeppelin song, or that's Dave Gilmour, or that's U2, or that's the Beatles, or that's Bob Dylan. So you can hear the flavours coming through in different people's writing styles. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. Sorry, I actually lost you for the first part of that. I was
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, I know you dropped out. I kept it going just because we're on the video here, but really what I was just saying is to listen to music and to really dissect it, pull it apart, analyze it.
Definitely.
Work. And that way, that will just the process of doing that it'll start to bring it into your music. You might discover chords that you didn't realize. You might discover certain harmonies that seem to work really well and that you like. You might discover, a certain drum pattern or a bass line or something. And so it comes through in your own playing. That's what I'm getting at, is that when you analyze music and pull it apart, then it starts to come through in your playing, your writing.
Okay.
Yeah,
that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So when I say schedule, and if you want, and that's great, if you want to structure what you do in that time, I would say break it into two halves just initially. Like, this is for your songwriting. Spend half of your time actually pulling apart somebody else's song, listening to it, breaking it down, and then spend the other half of your time writing. Just write and see what comes out. You can take the ideas from what you hear, and because nothing is new under the sun. When people write music, they're not reinventing music. They're just taking what they've already heard and doing something different with it. I think of it a bit like cooking, in that you're not going to suddenly come up with a new food. The basic foods are pretty well out there. People are still going to use the same ingredients. They're just going to come up with different ways of mixing those ingredients up and different ways of cooking with those ingredients.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
If I was doing for half an hour, do 15 minutes of pulling someone else's song apart and working it out. Go like, right, I really want to listen to Superstition by Stevie Wonder and work out how that sounds. And then the second half, not necessarily consciously imitating it, but maybe just writing something after you've done that for another 15 minutes. Is that sort of what you mean?
There's a range there. You can actually completely rip off somebody else's song, right? And you can completely try and write a song based exactly around their song. You know, trying to all the different parts and just. But obviously, if the song's too closely related, you're not going to be able to release it. You know, you're going to get sued. But it's a good exercise to do anyway. It'll help you to be able to. And look, this just doesn't happen just in music. This happens in everything. Films, you know, people will write a film script based on a classic film, and you look at the film and you go, that's very similar to that other film that I watched. You know?
It's funny. Actually, my girlfriend just got me a T-shirt it's just this black and white T-shirt that says "Great Artists Steal," and it's like my favorite T-shirt now. And yeah, so I think that's a lot of what you're saying there.
That's right. We beg, steal, and borrow. You know, and that's just the way it is. You know, comedians steal jokes. You know, and this goes on and on and on. You know, inventions. You know, science. Everything, and it's always kind of, you know, you stole my idea or he stole that idea from such and such, and you know, you've got this kind of ongoing thing. We'll say Edison and Tesla, or you know, Tesla was the genius and Edison stole all his ideas, and yeah, but Edison made a commercial. You know, if without Edison,
that's like a Taurus song, isn't it? Stairway to Heaven is like based on a Taurus song, I think, originally. Like,
right.
But, you know, who cares? It's not as good. Like, yeah.
That's right. They did something different with it. Look, there's I think Hotel California, there was a kind of a thing where it was taken from a Jethro Tull song. You know, the Jethro Tull song to me sounds different. The chord progression might be the same, but what Eagles did with it to me was much better. So it goes on and on and on. So. I wouldn't worry too much about that, and you know, for a lot of people, the best thing that can happen to them is to get sued by a big name artist, because then you get all over the newspaper and you get free publicity. We are always evolving. You know, everything evolves, and that's just the way it is. You know, we don't live in a vacuum. Everything is evolving. You know, you write a song, somebody else takes that song. You know, I even you know, lack of a better example, but I remember reading about or seeing a documentary on ABBA and how they went and spent a year sitting on some island in Sweden and wrote all their big hits. And they took most of their stuff from classical music. You know, most of those themes and kind of ostinatos and so forth, they all come from famous classical pieces. And so that's where you know, they got a lot of their ideas from, and they didn't hide it either. They were quite open about it. So the difference is the guys that they're probably being influenced by are not alive today and don't have any copyrights, so they should get away with it. Yeah. So the idea is that you will always have your own flavour. You will always do that, but the reason that you do music is because you were influenced by other musicians and other writers. You know, none of us do music without any influence. It doesn't work that way. So you kind of, when you're writing in the image of someone that you like, then you're really just paying them credit and you know, showing them. It's, you know, what's the saying? The highest form of what is it? The highest form of a highest compliment is to plagiarize. You know, stealing someone's material shows that you really respect their work. Okay, so looks like you might have dropped out again there. Are you there, Alex?
I'm back.
Okay, great. So yeah, so from this point, what I'm suggesting is that you model off other bands, other songwriters. You look at those guys, whatever they're doing is what you kind of want to start with. But then what happens is, as you bring together different influences, then your influence starts to change. You're no longer, you know, say you're a Metallica fan, your songs don't just sound like Metallica because maybe you also like, you know, Zeppelin, or you also like, you know, Justin Bieber. I know you're a big fan of Justin Bieber, so I thought I'd throw that in.
I love him. Love him.
Yeah. I knew. So mixing those styles, you'll come up with something different, right?
Yeah.
With it, and maybe Metallica fans will like it, maybe they won't, but you'll have your own style, and that's how styles survive. There's so many bands around who came off the back of the Beatles. Oasis are a perfect example. They were big Beatles fans. In Australia, who are kind of famous in the UK as well, was the band Crowded House. Again, they were big Beatles fans, and you can hear the influence of Beatles in their songs. So yeah, so don't be afraid to copy and beg, steal, and borrow. So
makes a lot of sense.
Is the first thing. The second thing there is to be scheduling. Third thing is to be delivering. And
sorry, in what way would you recommend delivering? Just like going, hey, look, here's the song that we've recorded, up on Facebook, do as you will with it. Just that sort of thing?
Yep. Just create like a Facebook page, and then ask people to like it, friends to like it. Start each month, post up a new song there. Build a mailing list as well, guys. If you like music, let me put you on the mailing list. Please share with your friends as well. As you build up that kind of audience, it'll grow. That's the thing. And if your music, if I go back to the Pumpkin Plan, the book that I was telling you about, the Pumpkin Plan, if you focus on doing something well, in other words, really get good at the style of music that you're writing. Be careful not to just be doing different things all the time. That can work for some bands, and it can work for successful bands. You look at the Beatles; they experimented a lot later in their career, but a lot of their music they wouldn't have got away with if they weren't already big and famous. A lot of those songs.
Everyone always starts doing one thing, like the Beatles did. Sorry for cutting off. The Beatles did all those, really sort of happy, fluffy pop songs at first, which were really well written, but it was in the same style, very much so. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Like, don't just
Love Me
grab
Do,
bag.
Exactly. They really, like you say, they follow that kind of simple 3-chord, happy, 8 days a week, blah blah blah, sticking to a very simple formula. And my dad described it really well, because my dad is of that era. And he said, you would never have heard the Beatles in their songs, and especially in their early songs, saying anything that was a bit too edgy. In other words, they were the good kids. They were the nice boys. They just had nice girlfriends and nice relationships, and they were the kind of kids that you want to bring home to your parents, and so they were cool. Like that. Whereas the Rolling Stones were more kind of your rebels. They were the guys. Yeah. They didn't sing kind of Love Me Do kind of songs. They're all about sort of bucking the system, and Jumpin' Jack Flash, Satisfaction. It was always kind of about a little bit of angst and a little bit of under my thumb. Telling the girlfriend that. It's these kind of things that the Beatles weren't talking about. The Rolling Stones were kind of, as my dad said, it's kind of like black and white. The Beatles were white, and Rolling Stones were black, and that created the two sides, and people could go one side or the other, or both if they liked a bit of both. So and the Rolling Stones tended to appeal more to the guys of that era, whereas the Beatles appealed more to the girls. They had different audiences. Okay, so if you can focus on one thing, and you can start to see, okay, what do people like? What is it that they're interested in, and probably more what you like, because you're going to have to keep writing songs along that vein.
Sure.
You then keep going along that line, and you keep writing songs. So you find a song that people like, you get a lot of likes for it. You go, okay, let me write a song that's not too different from that song. Let me evolve that song into another song. Yeah. And what happens is you evolve those songs. Again, I can go back to Pink Floyd and I can listen to those early things and I can hear their experimental stuff going on, and you hear a few little gems in those early albums and you go, wow, that's cool, but then this is really boring, and blah, 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 and then you get to another bit, oh, that's cool, and then you can see that by the time they got to Dark Side of the Moon, they brought all those ideas together and it's evolved into that album. So the other thing I would add here is that you want to enjoy this process. Does that make sense? Enjoy the process? You know what I'm saying?
I mean, if I didn't enjoy it, I couldn't keep doing it. Like I would stop doing it. I wouldn't have the force of will to make myself do it. So yeah, I totally understand that.
Enjoy the process, and this is why I say to a lot of guys, if you're young and you're in your 20s, then now is the time to build a business, which is exactly what you're doing. You're doing it the smart way. You're doing it the way that I really should have done it myself. But what you're doing is you're building a business which is creating an income for you that will allow you then to do your music. And it doesn't take that long to build a business. Now you've, in what, a year and a half, 2 years, I think, you've built up, your
Seriously, in maybe about 1.5 years, I'd say. Seriously, I've been doing it before that, but
I mean,
about 70 students.
Yeah, you got about 70 students, and you took a little while to kind of really do it seriously. I think in the beginning you were kind of just looking at it, testing it, and because you're still, but you focused, and even in that time you probably know you could have focused even more. But you can see that it doesn't take long, and if you spend another 12 months building your business up to the point where you've got 150 students or even 200 students, then you can hire teachers and pay them well, and you're going to get a good income, and then you can really focus on your music. You've got the freedom then.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And because it's a shop front, we've got free rehearsal space anyway.
Yeah, look, and the thing is that you're learning skills that are going to help you with your music as well, because the best musicians are business people. They're the ones who are most successful. I remember the classic story of how David Bowie and Mick Jagger got locked in a cupboard with Bette Midler, and the conversation went. They said to Bette Midler, this interview with Bette Midler, that would have been really interesting, but they talked about some weird and strange things, and she said, no, they just talked about business. She said, we're in the cupboard for 2 hours. They're talking about numbers and how much PAs were costing and how much management. Yeah, it was all business. People have the wrong idea about these guys. They think that Metallica are the same. Metallica are businessmen. Yeah. AC/DC, Malcolm Young, he's a businessman, very clever businessman at that. That George Young, his older brother, is a businessman as well. He basically runs Australian music back in the 80s, 80s and 90s. He was really the man, George and Vanda Young. Pretty well run the Australian music industry. They're running a business, and that's why AC/DC is so successful, because they think as a business. So you're looking at your thing as a business. Your music is your product, and your image is a product as well. If you're going to be the guy on the stage standing up there, you're the product, and so therefore you need to be thinking about it in business terms, and that's why learning business, as you are through G4, then you can apply those same lessons and bring them across to your music career.
It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
In terms of just, it's actually probably a little bit earlier to think about it, but in terms of leveraging some element of maybe the fan base I've got, well, it's not a fan base, but the students I have, even at the guitar school, would you have that at all, or because some of those kids are like 13, 14.
Definitely. You see, kids in the sort of teenage group are the ones who are going to be most influenced, because they are the ones who are now looking for music. They're at that age where their emotions are running high, their hormones are running high, and so they're attaching music to actual emotional events in their life. So, you know, listening to a song with their first girlfriend or boyfriend, or you know, going to an event for the first time, a live concert. This is really a time when, and for most people, that age, and they've really narrowed it down, that age of 14 years of age is when people actually have the deepest influence of music. So the music that you listen to at 14 is the music that tend to stick with you. Yeah.
For sure.
So yeah, if you can get your students on board and get them listening to your music, and just ask them, go, hey, what do you think about this, and or just find out what they're into, to start listening to what is current as well, to see if you can somehow, you know, meld your music a little bit with what's current. That's what I would be considering as well. Not sort of losing touch with what you want and what you like, but understanding that if you want to sell your music and you want your music to be popular, then you really do need to tap into the teen market. I think it's very difficult to get a mature adult market musically, because they just love their old music and just stick with what they know. Yeah.
I mean, is that in terms of, would you say there's like an age cutoff, like 25 or something, or?
I just think as they get older, it gets harder.
The older they are. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense.
Look,
I mean, even now, I can see myself sort of listening to things, and a lot of new music I'll listen to and go, wow, this is really great. I put on like a Randy Newman album the other day, and I was like, this is really cool. I've never heard him before, but a lot of it I'll hear myself going like, oh, you know, this isn't really my sort of thing. This new stuff is, it's not really for me. So yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah, and you get busy. Like, you know, as adults get busy, they don't have time. You know, I look at how, you know, when I was a teen, I was always listening to music. I was, you know, always had the radio on in the car whenever we got in the car, or had, you know, the radio blasting at home, and I was listening to the radio, so I was listening to music that was current. These days, I never listen to the radio, and
me neither,
you know,
actually.
Yeah, and you know, for my limited listening time that I have, I want to listen to stuff that I like. So I don't have that kind of patience to be sort of trolling through music to find out what I like. So hopefully, every now and again, you know, I've got a few friends who sort of say, "Hey, check this out," and that's good. And we used to do that a lot. You know, I remember in my teens and 20s, we were always comparing music. You know, say, "Got to check this album out." And it was almost like a bit of competition to see who could come up with a new
collection.
Yeah. So I've got something you got to listen to, dude. And then everyone listened to it, and they go, "Oh wow!" And you know, and I could say, "I was the one that introduced you to that. Remember me?" You know?
Yeah.
There was a friend of mine who he was the first one to introduce us to Van Halen, and I think it was about 1980, maybe somewhere. Yeah, and when we heard it, it was like, "Oh, this is amazing!" And so he became a legend himself. This kid, because he was the one who introduced Van Halen to everybody.
Yeah.
He was just one of those guys who was right on the edge. He was always coming up with the latest stuff. He at that time he introduced us to Kiss. He somehow got you know, the Back in Black album before everybody else. I don't know how he did it, but I remember back then he had connections where he was able to get the first releases of records. I think through his mother or something like that, but yeah. So that teenage age bracket, if you can hit them up, you know, that's where your Justin Biebers, your One Directions, that's where these guys come from, because they have this huge following of young thing. You wouldn't get a Justin Bieber among, you know, 40-year-olds. They just aren't that easily influenced.
Yeah.
It's I guess it's hormonal. That's all I can say. Something running through their hormones, it creates it. Yeah.
So if you can latch onto that with what you're doing, then it's then you're gonna have a surefire winner for sure.
Yeah. Okay, so let's wrap up. And just so you've got the clear points there. So we, as I said, and I've been over this a few times, but let's just point by point. We talked about modelling.
Yep.
So, listening to other bands and not just their music, but their whole career. Really research them and get a couple of mentors, a couple of bands that you think you would like to emulate and follow them.
Yep.
And, you can look at bands. You look at Metallica. They had bands that they followed. If you read up on them, I think that they were Iron Maiden fans or Kiss fans or something like that. They had their heroes.
Yep.
Then the next thing is scheduling. Make sure that you've got that schedule happening. Third thing, what did we say the third thing was? I forgot.
Right, or was that with modelling?
Delivering. Yeah.
Delivery.
Yeah, scheduling is the writing. That's where you're going to write your music. So it's deliver. Okay.
Yep.
So deliver. Make sure you deliver. Try and once a month release some music. Put it up there.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Set yourself a deadline. I don't know. We're now 9th of May, so 9th of May next month you should have a new song released. And don't worry if it's not perfect. Just get it out there. It'll push you to. If you've got a date of release, it'll push you to get it right.
Okay. Cool.
And what else did we say? So the fourth point is just business. Understand that it's a business.
Yep.
And use obviously what you're learning within G4, learn those business principles. See, once you start to see something, and I'll just sort of add this to the end. Once you start to see that you've got a song that people like, that your loyal core followers like, then you can start investing in that song. In other words, you can pay for it to appear on YouTube, or you can pay to have a video made, like a professional video done, and then that way you can attach the music to the video and then put that up and pay for people to actually see it as a paid advertisement. And that way you're backing something that people already like because you've got a core audience that like it. Also, the people in your kind of Facebook group who like your music, start tracking them. Look at what other music they like, and then look for people who like that same music and try and get them to listen to your song. So you're targeting people who like what your music's about. So. Another trick, just quickly, is and a lot of artists do this, and they even do it themselves, is to get labeled the next somebody, the next Metallica, the next Beatles, the next this, because people are curious. Oh, okay, well I'm into the Beatles or I'm into Metallica, and this band's supposed to be the next Metallica. Let me check them out. So that's a way of getting people to look at your music as well. But make sure
do that. Yeah, it's appropriate. Do it like say, oh, it's going to be the next, Beatles or whatever.
Yeah. You can get someone to write a blog. You can write a blog yourself. But use references to other bands. A lot of people like to have this thing about I'm an individual. I invented my music. I'm like nobody else. You hear it. People say, what's your music like? It's like nothing else you've ever heard before. Well, that's great, but I need some idea before I'm interested. It's like going to a restaurant and saying, what's the food? What's the food like? Oh, it's like nothing you've ever tasted before. Well, I don't know if I want to taste it then.
That's funny. Yeah. No, I get that. And it's really counterintuitive too to like the artistic temperament to be like, well, we don't sound like anyone else. We're totally individual. Yeah.
That's it.
I totally get that though. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, don't be afraid. And people might even, criticize you and say, well, actually, you don't sound like them at all. I got no problem with that. At least you listen to my music, Now, So lots of little tricks like this, lots of little things that you can do, and you just keep working away at it, keep building your music, keep building your audience, keep in contact with your audience, look after your loyal supporters. Make sure they're the first ones to hear your music. Make sure they're the first ones to get VIP tickets to your concerts or your gigs. All right.
Yeah, right.
All right, so we'll leave it there, Alex, and yeah, and if you want to have a follow up sometime, just let me know.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks so much for that, David. That's really clarified a lot, and it's made it seem doable, which is always nice. Just when you're starting out.
Just break it down, and I'm looking forward to that first song.
Yeah, I'll let you know. Definitely.
And I promise I won't criticise it. I'll just listen to it. And I'll enjoy it. I won't. Yeah.
Don't knock me too early.
No. So just put them out there. Just get into the habit of doing it. All right.
Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna get onto that half an hour a day for a week and see if I can do that.
Excellent. All right. Cool. I'll talk to you soon then, Alex.
Cool. Thanks so much, David. Talk to you soon. See ya.
Bye bye.